This program is brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with the City of Eau Claire. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for coming out tonight. It's a little treacherous out there, so we do appreciate your attendance. I'd like to start off with some detailed stuff here. This meeting is broadcast live by Valley MediaWorks on Charter Channel 994. We're also on 101.9 FM and valleymediaworks.org. The Plan Commission attempts to conduct its public hearings in a relatively informal manner within the constraints that we must deal with the issues before us in an orderly and business-like fashion. We give the applicant an opportunity to speak first, and then others, that could be for or against, are each permitted to speak once. We do request that everyone restrict their comments to the issues before us, avoid unnecessary repetition, and be prudent with use of time, please. We want to be sure that we have adequate time to review and discuss all items with equal diligence. If anybody has any cell phones or other devices, please turn them off or to silent. If you'd like to speak tonight, there are yellow slips on the back table we'd like you to fill out. Give them to Ryan when you come up here to speak, he'll grab them from you. And if you do speak tonight, please introduce yourself along with your address. So with that, we'll get to our first item tonight. And with that, we've got a certificate of appreciation for Mr. John Jenskow. John, how about should we go up to the podium? Please join me. I've got a little, can everybody hear me? I've got a little certificate of appreciation to read for John that the staff at the city prepared. So whereas John Jenskow has worked at the City of Eau Claire since August 19th of 1996 as the Deputy City Engineer in the Engineering Department. Go figure. He's been a strong advocate of comprehensive planning, site planning, city and riverfront beautification, floodplain management, stormwater quality, and neighborhood revitalization. Whereas his professional knowledge and experience has been a cornerstone of our Plan Commission, and whereas his thoughtful and detailed review of development proposals has encouraged higher quality of development for our community. Now, therefore, the City Plan Commission for the City of Eau Claire hereby wishes to acknowledge its appreciation for John and John's contributions, leadership, and the service to the City of Eau Claire. We will miss you, but congratulate you on a well-deserved retirement. Congratulations,
well,
John. Thank you.
Well, I'll try to be brief because you've got a fairly long agenda before you. They said it would be a cold day when I retired. So I guess that's probably true. I started coming to the Plan Commission in 1996 on an interim basis as we did some staff changes. Now here it is 22 and a half years later and a couple elimination of positions, and interim became permanent, and I did some brief calculations. I think that in those 22 and a half years, I've been to over 1,100 Plan Commission and City Council meetings. So that's quite a few. About 1,400 site plan reviews, about 150 development agreements, and those development agreements added about 30 miles of new public streets paid for by developers. So that's about 10% of our system in the last 10 years paid for and provided to the city by our development community and the growth that's happened. I think one of the beauties of this job, one of the things that I've really liked is that pretty much every day you can go home and know that you did something that made somebody's life better. They may not know it, but you know, in the course of what we've done, we've done something. And you know, people will come in with their problems. What we hear are the symptoms. And then we have to determine what the problem really is and then what the solution to that problem is. And so that's why I chose engineering in the first place, and it's been a rewarding career. So 42 years of practice, it's time to stop practicing. So thank you. I appreciate this. I'm humbled and touched.
All right. And spoken like a true engineer. Thanks, John. All right, on to item 2, appointment of 2 Plan Commission members to renewal of Energy Action Plan. Scott?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This evening, we're taking one step closer to launching the Renewable Energy Action Plan project for this year. Back in March of last year, the City Council adopted major sustainability goals for the City of Eau Claire, and with a goal of 2050 to become carbon neutral and use 100% renewable energy. As part of that, planning staff, particularly through the efforts of Associate Planner Ned Noel, were able to secure a state grant late last year to fund the creation and adoption of a renewable energy action plan. The action plan will also include important sub-elements, such as creating a net zero energy construction development guide and electric vehicle plan. These 2 projects will also be reviewed by the Plan Commission. Again, the City Council has charged the Sustainability Advisory Committee to lead these various projects, again, under the overall umbrella of the Renewable Energy Action Plan. It relates quite a bit to the city's comprehensive plan regarding sustainability and health chapters in particular. So with that, staff is seeking 2 plan commissioners to serve on a steering committee to help develop the action plan. The commitment is to participate in 4 to 6 evening meetings over the course of the year. Also to review and comment on draft plans, and then act as liaisons back here to the commission. So with that, I'd like to garner any interested names and go from there. If we have more than 2, if we have 4 or 5 of you that'd like to jostle for that, we can take a vote, I suppose. But if there are any, Mr. Chair, I'll defer to you in terms of getting any kind of show of hands or interested yay or nays here.
Well, Greg isn't in his seat yet, so I suppose that means he's nominating himself. Any volunteers? Terry? Oh, Zena.
Those are the first 2?
So Zena, anybody? No,
Oh, we didn't name. Okay.
we got 1 for sure. Anybody else?
Can I nominate somebody?
Terry, that'd be great.
I'll nominate Jeremy Dragon. I know he's not here.
As a council member, is he allowed?
Oh, I don't know.
It would be. That's a good question. I think preferably we'd like to have a plan commissioner, because there are 2 city council members that also will be assigned. Yeah.
Probably love to do it though. Looking for 1 more volunteer. James.
I would like to, but I'm awfully busy. Sorry.
Sorry, what was the?
This is for the
Expected,
The
Number of
Renewable
meetings?
Energy Action Plan. So Renewable Energy Action Plan is going to be operated under the Sustainability Advisory Committee, looking for 2 volunteers for 4 to 6 evening meetings this calendar year.
sure.
Right.
volunteers,
All right.
Greg. So we got 2.
Very good. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks you both. Appreciate it. All right. Anything else you need on that one?
No, I don't. I suppose it would be appropriate to get a formal motion. Would be nice to have that.
Okay.
If there'd be a motion for those 2
I guess
appointments.
we'd be looking for a motion to nominate Zena and Mr. Gramlin. Yes, Eric?
Either one of us.
Eric
First
made the
and
motion
second.
and Terry seconded it.
All right.
All right, we got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Very good. Thank you. And we should be looking at probably even later this month or sometime in March to get this kicked off. So thank you.
All right. Now, let's see, on to item number 3, which is our item for Wilson Square that was postponed from the January 14th meeting. Mr. Petrie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson, and good evening. Before you is a rehearing. It was postponed at your last meeting on December 14th. Also was postponed at December 21st at council. The property is located downtown on the south end. More or less so. I don't have an update between the agreement, between the two neighbors that were discussed at the last meeting. Staff did receive an email from Jonah talking about affordable housing, not only for seniors, but for apartments and memory care. That unfortunately is not, we don't have much in the ordinance regarding affordable housing at this time. So that email was sent out to you. With that being said, I don't know if there's any questions regarding the rezoning, general development plan, site plan, alley vacation, but staff would be standing for any questions at this time. I do know the applicants are in the audience. They probably will get up and speak here shortly, but staff would stand for any questions at this time for this item.
So any questions, Mr. Larson? Oh, hang on, sorry. Oh, no.
Should just hit the lights.
Am I on?
Yeah, you're on.
Okay. I understand staff was working on a task force report of some kind regarding affordable housing. Has that been completed?
I would defer that to Mr. Allen.
Ms. Larson and the Commission, very good question. The Regional Housing Task Force is included in its initial efforts back in December. Staff is on that. Staff meeting on city government, self-primarily, and are working on finalizing perhaps executive summary, perhaps longer scope report. So we'll have a work session with City Council meeting in February, so I think February 26th. So we should have some more to present and share publicly in a couple weeks.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Yes, Terry.
In that there were questions concerning affordability for seniors and a need for senior housing. The parking stalls is 0.75 parking stalls per unit. What happens if they don't fill it with seniors?
It's a good question, Mr. Peterson. This is the plan development ordinance, so it would be a senior apartments with memory care facility and a portion of it a commercial space. So if they came back and the applicant decided that they're not going to do senior housing or memory care, or even the commercial, it would have to come back to this plan commission and council to amend the general development plan and plan development ordinance to allow for market rate apartments or student apartments or student housing.
Okay. One other question. I noticed parking stalls outside of the underground was 38 in the write-up. It was 40 in the narrative. It's 36 on one site plan and 38 on another site plan. Probably the developer can address those discrepancies. I think all three of them or all four of them meet the minimum needed.
That is correct. I believe the applicant would be able to address that, but they do meet all the parking requirements with any of those numbers or all of those numbers. But the applicant may be able to tell you exactly how many numbers there are.
Okay, and my last question, when the actual design comes in, that's reviewed by planning staff?
That's correct.
Okay, because one of my main concerns is those south-facing parking spots opposite the ramp, just off of Barstow Street.
Are you talking about this area right here? So the ramps here are going down.
Yeah.
This is going into the driveway, into the stalls for the surface parking. You're concerned about I assume the elevation changes as you.
My big concern is if it's a 6-inch curb between the parking lot and the sidewalk, that won't stop a car that's thrusting forward. I'm just wondering how high that retaining wall is going to be above the sidewalk to stop any vehicles from going into the ramp. And then they talk about a metal railing above that. And if it's just 2 pipes, that's not going to stop pedestrians from falling over into the ramp area. So that's a concern for me too, a safety concern, both for vehicles pulling into the parking spots, and let's say they hit the accelerator rather than the brake. It'd be nice if those cars were stopped from going down the ramp from its side, and also to keep pedestrians from the sidewalk to falling into the ramp area too.
Sure.
So something to look at in the site plan.
Good. Any additional questions for Ryan? All right, I'm not seeing any. Can we get the applicant up here?
I'm Matt Apple with Advanced Engineering Concepts, the engineer here on behalf of the owner.
Alex Paternos with JCAP here on behalf of the owner.
Hi, guys. Anything to add or any updates?
You want to address the ramp situation?
Sure. I apologize for the kind of the inconsistency in the parking arrangements. It's been finalized that we'll have 39 exterior stalls, 2 of those accessible, and then 72 interior underground stalls. And that's just working with the site and looking at a few of the constraints, just shifting around some curb. You know, it's essentially the same site plan, but just working on a few site constraints. Other than that, you address the railing. There will be a railing, you know, a standard architectural railing above the retaining wall around the ramp. It's been discussed and talked about adding the structural wall and getting that raised up. We will be adding the bumper stops along in front of the curb so that there's, you know, an extra level. Anything else as far as the site plan goes? Sure.
Eric.
Were you able to come to an agreement with your neighbors?
Alex can speak to that.
We've been working on an agreement for a couple weeks now. Just before this meeting, we got an email that they'd be in support of it as well, and in good faith that we'll
Okay.
sign it.
Thank you.
Additional questions for applicant? Oh, Zena, yes.
I guess, just a little concerned about the number of individuals and groups that have concerns about these plans not including any affordable housing units. Do you have any comments about that?
Yeah, we'll be implementing the elderly waiver program, which is a state program that helps take over for the services and health care once the individual becomes indigent.
Additional questions? Okay. Oh, yep, Terry. I think I gotcha. Try it again.
On pages 14, 15, and 16 of our layout, our packet shows one parking layout, and page 19 shows another. And it's basically concerning the island on the east end of the north parking, the north-facing parking, and then it includes any parking where the alley is to be vacated on the east end of the building that's to remain.
Can you describe that again?
On 3 pages of our packet, it shows parking with a bulb island on the east end of the north-facing parking. And on page 19 of our packet, it shows a totally different kind of a triangular. And then it shows parking on the east end of the building that's to remain in the northeast quadrant of that block. It looks like there's parking spots there maybe for delivery to that building that's going to stay there.
Yes, on the northeast side of the existing building, there's an alleyway that'll remain 14 feet wide. That's going to be a 1,100 square foot loading zone. And then, yes, we've since revised, since this has kind of been at the city for a little bit, and the architect that you're probably seeing where that bulb's kind of pushed out into that area didn't, update that plan. But our plan is very similar to what you're seeing up there. That's the current plan. That's the plan that will go to construction where the bulb's been pulled down. So it's flush with that northeast side of that existing building. It'll allow, direct access through the alleyway, and then the parking lot that enters onto South Barstow, that'll have a 24-foot ingress-egress easement through there to connect that alleyway with Barstow. So there'll be a throughway public ingress easement from Seaver through the alleyway and then through South Barstow. In addition, part of the one of the things that came up that the neighbor requested was a 12-foot access easement along, it would be the southeast side of his building for maintenance, for access in the future. The topics come up about his exterior of his building, so we've drawn up a 12-foot access easement along there. So he's got access on both sides of his building since it's a zero, lot line building in that location.
One other thing.
Sure.
Talk of a demolition of the shared wall, and then there's talk about a shared foundation between the two buildings, one that's to remain and the other that's going to be demolished. Do you know if the foundation is shared with dual walls above that, or there's just a single wall that's shared by the two buildings? Are there two separate buildings with just a shared foundation?
There's no shared foundation.
I do not know. That was under a separate structural analysis but from what I understand, it wasn't going to be an issue with removing. I believe it's a double wall. So each correct. And it sounded like there weren't going to be, there's nothing tied together that would be removed that, but I wasn't involved in that portion of it, of the analysis, so.
Thank you. Just that there's two walls.
That's what I understood.
Any additional questions? All right. Guys, I don't see any. Is there anybody else here that'd like to discuss this item?
Good evening. My name is Tanya Bruder. I'm an attorney at Nodoff Flory. Our firm represents EPI of South Barstow Street, LLC. Its sole members are Steve and Connie Harmon. Steve and Connie are here with us again this evening. Steve and Connie, through their LLC, own the lot that is adjacent to the proposed development site. At last meeting, my partner, Attorney Brian Nodoff, was here on behalf of EPI. Unfortunately, Attorney Nodoff has other obligations, so he apologizes that he cannot be here. Unfortunately, you guys are stuck with me. At the last meeting, this matter was tabled to allow the parties an opportunity to complete negotiations on a definitive agreement that would help take care of some of the issues that were talked about this evening due to the fact that these two buildings, while they don't share a wall, are adjoining one another, and to ensure that the Harmon's property would be protected as this development moves forward. Unfortunately, the parties have not been able to reach a definitive resolution as of this date. I'm certainly encouraged by some of the comments offered by the developer that they've factored in an easement for access for the benefit of my client. Unfortunately, we haven't reduced anything to writing that would indicate that's the case, but certainly some progress has been made, although it has been a bit difficult. We don't have any intention of needlessly delaying this project. Our only intent and our only goal here is to ensure that this project doesn't come at the expense of the Harmons. We want to give the developer the benefit of the doubt that they're going to do the right thing here. And as a showing of our good faith, which we trust will be reciprocated by the developer, we ask that you forward this matter onto the council with the anticipation that the developer and EPI will be able to reach a definitive agreement that addresses these issues in advance of that council meeting.
Great. Any questions for the speaker? See any? Well, thanks a lot, Councilor.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Are there any other individuals who'd like to discuss this item tonight? Anybody else like to discuss Wilson Square? Last chance. All right, I guess we'd be looking for a motion. Got a motion? Look for a second. Terry? All right. Motion and a second. Any discussion? Oh, I got Terry here.
Go ahead. I'm just going to, is the term friendly amendment maybe appropriate here to add to the motion that we move approval provided there's a definitive agreement at the time of the council meeting?
No conditional approvals?
Oh, me? All right. Well, since there is rezoning here, we're not allowed to, I guess, condition the rezoning specifically. That's certainly something, maybe not as a formal amendment, but as a, a notation or a comment, we can certainly pass that along as a, like I said, a friendly or informal comment. We can do that.
Thank you.
Mr. Jenskow, your astute opinion, please. Last time I think you mentioned they would not be able to get a building permit until these shared agreements were in place, or what was that issue last time?
Well, they can't get a building permit until the engineering department approves the grading and drainage plan.
That's what it was.
As part of the grading and drainage plan review, we would look at the impacts of that water quality best management practice, which is adjacent to the neighbor's building. I think part of the discussion of that is potentially what kind of waterproofing there would be done to the neighbor's wall, because you're trying to infiltrate water, a small amount of water next to that building. And so that would be part of that review. Having said that, we would look for the waterproofing plans to be prepared by a licensed engineer. And it would be the responsibility of the engineer and his stamp, the liability that goes along with his personal stamp would govern how that would work. Because we're looking at a private property that's not this development and not public infrastructure.
Right. Okay. Thank you. There was another question. Terry, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to add on to Commissioner Bernhold's idea there, and I would hope too that I think, moving forward that, not just with this project, but with future developments, when there are these situations that arise, when you have two buildings owned by two separate people, that, that we as a body and as a city would make sure that we're looking out for both parties and supporting that whole idea of them working together. And so I hope and like to pass along to both parties that they can really try and find a way to come to an agreement here in the next 8 days, and also look at something more long-term for us as a community too, to see if we can eliminate some of these questions. So, thank you.
Yeah, sounds great. Anybody else? Comments? Not seeing it. Let's call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That's right. Thanks. All right. Congratulations. Good luck. Item 4, we've got a public hearing for recommendation to City Council, Gateway Business Park, amendment to the sign standards for the park. Mr. Allen.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. As I wait for Ryan so I can forward the slides, I'll just fill in real briefly. The applicant in this case is Gateway Industrial Park Corporation. It is obviously a large industrial park north side of the city. The applicant is requesting, as a result of additional use and expansion of a multi-tenant building, we're interested in looking to amend ground sign standards for multiple tenant buildings within the business park. Existing provisions allow one monument sign per building with a maximum size of 70 square feet and a maximum height of 6 feet with a minimum setback of 15 feet. And again, we tried to include, hopefully extensively and comprehensively, the design standards for Gateway West Business Park, which again have some more restricted covenants or restrictions than you might normally find in, for example, the current overall City of Eau Claire sign code. So hence those differentiation and variations with their standards. Again, the board is proposing that for multiple tenant buildings or multi-tenant buildings, the standards be changed to follow the size and height standards of the city's kind of base sign code. Subject to approval of a sign plan by the Plan Commission where warranted. This would potentially allow for ground signs up to 200 square feet in size and 40 feet in height. Upon approval of the sign plan, and up to 400 square feet if a conditional use permit is approved. So again, attach that proposed amendment, again, as requested by the board in your packet. Again, because, as they stated in their narrative, because there are unique size restrictions placed on freestanding signs within the park, they're looking for this change with the intent to modify multi-tenant sign restrictions to be the same as this overall City of Eau Claire ordinance. Again, some of the concerns that we have as staff is that current standards have been in place since Gateway Business Park was created back in 1992 and were adopted as part of the zoning approval in order to provide higher amenity standards for the business park, again, based on its highly visible location along the North Crossing and North Claremont Avenue. In addition, such changes could create conflicts with single-tenant buildings, therefore having differing standards. With that, staff was kind of looking at kind of splitting the difference, as it were, from what's being proposed or requested and what is currently in place. And so for your consideration, we're looking at recommending something up to 150 square feet instead of the 200 square feet and 15 feet in height instead of that 40 feet in height for multiple tenant buildings, and believe that that would be a little bit more appropriate. So with that, again, I can stand for any questions. There's a related, if not identical, request with the next agenda item related specifically to Gateway Northwest Business Park. But again, this one is specifically related to Gateway West. And again, staff is recommending something kind of splitting the difference there from the full request from the applicant, which admittedly does match the existing sign code for the city, and what's currently required, which is obviously a lot more restrictive in nature. So, stand for any questions.
Any questions? Yeah, Terry.
Is there a notice sent out to everyone that's a member of the Gateway Park?
Yes. And oh yeah, thank you. Hey, look, there's the map. Appreciate that. Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, showing the notification there, and I believe Mr. Petrie may have received a number of phone calls. I believe 7 phone calls specifically from folks asking about the amendment. So.
Follow up?
Yeah, please.
Those 7 phone calls were in support of this, or was there any comments from the people that responded? Or?
When you send out a notification like this, most people will call and ask why they're changing the zoning. Unfortunately, they're not changing the zoning in this situation. They're changing the sign standards. So mostly it was just questions regarding what they were doing, what the proposal was.
Sure. All right. Thank you.
Yep. I apologize if I wasn't clear on that. It is essentially a zoning amendment because of how the restrictions were put in place back in 1992.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? All right. So this one's a public hearing, so it'd be, is there an applicant? Are we?
Not sure if anybody's here from the Gateway Board.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
All right.
Mr. Hallowan's here.
Mr. Allen, come on up.
Still trying to get acclimated to the new setup with the screens, so I may need your help as we do it. My name is Jeff Hallowan. I'm with the Landmark Company, 4004 Oakwood Hills Parkway here in the city of Eau Claire. Mr. Allen has given you, I think, the overview of it. A couple things about Gateway for those of you who don't know. Gateway is a nonprofit that owns and operates the industrial park on the northwest side. You're seeing this because the park is actually two pieces. The original park, which is this section in front of you, Gateway West, is over 25 years old now. Most of it's been sold. North of the tracks is Gateway Northwest. That is still being developed. The general development plan is virtually identical. In fact, it's a happy coincidence, Mr. Jenskow, that I'm here tonight. I think I was at your first, and you do indeed leave the city better than you found it. But this goes back, you will remember, even before your time. I think we both inherited it. The first general development plan was, in fact, drafted by the city. The city, as part of Gateway, serves on the board. The second one that you're going to see is nearly identical, and I think Gateway drafted. So a general development plan, as you know, it cannot be done with a waiver or anything else. We've had a request from one of the businesses in the park to do a sign, and clearly the language doesn't allow it. So the only way forward in talking with city staff after they came into City Hall is to do a more comprehensive amendment to the sign ordinance and hopefully make sure it makes sense going forward for all these uses. A couple things that have happened in the park over the past 20, 25 years, some of these buildings that were built as single occupant buildings have been now divided. There's more than one business. And there's a glitch in the language, frankly. We all weren't smart enough 25 years ago. Right now, one monument sign per business is what it reads. Well, obviously, that doesn't work if you've got more than one business in a building. So one of the amendment changes is let's make it per building. And if you've got more than one business in a building, we ought to revert to a more consistent ordinance. There was some discussion with the staff about just using the baseline city ordinance. Easier to interpret, no confusion, easier for people who own those buildings. Frankly, it surprises me a little bit that the staff is concerned about the 250 square foot piece and wants 150. I don't think, frankly, Gateway cares one way or the other. It does seem to me, though, if you're going to have a distinct ordinance that you're looking at elsewhere in the community, if we're going to make a distinction, we ought to make sure that there's a reason for it, just because it's easier to enforce if you're consistent going forward. Again, I don't think it's going to be a big issue for either the sign that is planned or going forward. We're comfortable with whatever you're comfortable with. But we also think you do look at the sign ordinance from time to time in other contexts, and you have over the last 25 years. If you're comfortable it works elsewhere, we think it probably is a good guide here too. But we'll take your direction on whatever recommendation you wish to make. I don't think we have strong feelings. Again, these two proposals are virtually identical. It's just different areas of the park, but the same issue. So with that, unless you have any questions, it will allow, I think, the user to go forward with their sign, and we think it's a good, usable thing going forward for the rest of the park, too.
Jeff, real quick, with other businesses in the park, have they given you any feedback on sign expectations or hopes? Or?
No, we haven't. You know, over the years, it has been an issue with some of the bigger buildings. The last one I can think of, frankly, HDI is actually 3 different buildings, but one business, so that was an issue with their sign way back in the day. We think we're going to see more of it, though. Just these are bigger buildings that are being divided in some cases. Probably better to get out ahead of it. And we're amending them both, even though I think the applicant who is actually seeking to do something is this one in front of you. It's an existing business. We just think it ought to be the same rule throughout the park.
Any additional questions? Yes, Eric.
If I'm reading the report correctly, the current standards for setbacks is 50 feet on state highways and 25 feet in all other streets. That's correct?
Correct. Yes.
And I apologize, but is that what the staff is proposing for setbacks here too? Or is there a different?
Yes, but, in terms of the 50 feet and the 25 feet?
Yes.
Yes, because that would be consistent with the current standard, the overall city sign code standards.
Okay. And if I may, Mr. Hallen, so the board's position is that we should have the consistent ordinance
We think
for
there-
the park.
We
as it is
think
for the
there's
rest
some
of the city.
value to it. Now, having said that, we have not heard a clamoring for anyone to be more restrictive. We're bumping up against why the distinction other parts in the city with buildings that essentially look the same.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Not seeing any. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
So this is public hearing, right? So we're, anybody like to speak for or against it? Come on up.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Dan Drexler with Stratford Sign Company, Stratford, Wisconsin, speaking on behalf of Lockery Development Management Company that oversees the building that we're talking about. And it was our request that has kind of driven the changing of the zoning and the sign ordinance here. And this is a particular, the IDEX building, which we're talking about in particular here. And there's some site difficulties with that particular property for some sort of signage. And so I would just like to talk about those, briefly and kind of say how we had come to where we are today. But anyhow, this is a multi-tenant building, and looking back, as was stated earlier, with the current sign proposal, that it really didn't work out for what we needed to have done with the building. And with that property, the building actually sits like 12 to 15 feet below grade at that intersection. And so I know that there was some discussion about overall height of the sign of being 15 feet high, and there's a little bit of a concern. We're not really looking to get anything maybe even as large as we proposed. We're just looking to get some sort of signage out there that identifies the building and gets the people to that driveway that's there. So, overall height of the sign of 15 feet probably wouldn't work the best at that location, just simply because it's so far below grade. And then the other difficulty with that site in particular is that I know that there was some discussion about the setback, and the 25-foot setback in that with that property probably wouldn't work out very well either, simply because that would put the proposed sign, or any sign that we would put on that property, would put it in basically in the blacktop parking lot. So, if there was something, we were hoping that there'd maybe be something that would work out 10 feet from the property line, which on that particular intersection is still clearly back. It is almost to the blacktop parking lot in itself. So hopefully I'm explaining that the best I can, and I understand that we're trying to get some sort of uniformity with the sign ordinance with the city. It's just that, we have, based on this particular building, our request for the signage is kind of driven this whole thing, and there's just a couple difficulties with it. And I think clearly at the end of the day, what we're really trying to do is just get a sign that identifies the building, that is not overly large, that would be somewhat to grade with that property, so that when you come up to that intersection, that it is readable and you can figure out where you're going to get into that building there. So.
Any questions for the speaker, Mr. Seymour?
How tall of a sign would you need at that location to make it work? Have you figured that out?
Well, I mean, we had, the one that we had originally drawn, which I do have some drawings of it here, and I don't know if anybody else has it, but I can just, yeah.
Late on that.
You know, we had originally proposed the sign of, sure, of 30 feet high, which would be, you know, to grade would be approximately 12 to 15 feet, and then the sign would stick up another 15 feet above that. So that's what we were, you know, originally proposed, and, you know, talking with Ryan, and, you know, we thought that maybe that, you know, if that wasn't going to be approved, that we could make something work smaller than that. So we could even go something like if it was 12 to 15 feet to grade. And when I say 12 to 15 feet, I've estimated it. At this point, that's all I have done is estimated it to grade. But then above that, so if it's 12 to 15 feet, anything that would be another 10 to 12 feet up from there. So overall height of it at that particular location would be anywhere, you know, approximately 24 feet, 20 to 24 feet, which would be the 12 feet to grade, because our setback is so, you know, it's not on the intersection at all. It's basically back to that parking lot, which I have some drawings of that too, and I don't know if it's easy enough to show it or not, but the setback is so far back that it's basically back to the parking lot, and that's why we're requesting that it's only a 10-foot setback instead of the 25-foot, because realistically, the way that that property line runs at that building, that if we were to do the 25-foot setback, the, you know, any structure that we would use to support that sign would be in the parking lot is the problem. So, you know, we're kind of willing to work with you. We're just trying to get something for our customer that's going to work, be effective, because at this point, you know, the way the ordinance reads, there would be nothing that would work for that particular location just because of the way the grade is, because of the setback, because of the sign. So.
Could I ask a follow-up, please?
Yes.
Thank you. How many square feet is that sign?
That sign is considerably more than what would be approved, but we're willing to, at this point, you know, I think if you guys were talking 150 or 200 square feet, we can certainly make that work. We will adjust our plan to get the tenants in the building what they need, and we think that's with that would work. So kind of the two sticking points here would be really the overall height of it would be a little bit minimal for what we need in the setback is what is the real issue, probably.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Larson.
So the current allowance for the setback in the business park is 15 feet. Is that sufficient? I mean, you were talking about 10 feet, but would 15 feet put it in the parking lot too?
I think that would probably be about the maximum that we can make it work would be 15.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions, Terry?
Are you looking at a retail tenant in there or industrial manufacturing tenant?
The tenant that we're looking at that's in there right is the IDEX, and they have been the best that I know have been the tenant in there for some time. Is that true, Vic?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So in
call center and problem solving for their software business.
Okay, the reason I'm thinking is most people that are going to go to a non-retail business, they're probably going to make a contact beforehand, and someone can describe where they're at, and then they can see the sign. You know, as opposed to retail where it's drive-by traffic may slam onto it and drive in there. So maybe visibility isn't that much of a factor, you know, and that they're going to know where this business is approximately anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what your point is there, and it's just, I think that and, you know, maybe somebody can explain it a little bit better, but in this particular situation, I think because of the number of people that they have involved in the IDEX business, that, you know, they have clearly, at this point, they have really no signage there, and you know, they're the ones that are driving this, saying that it's part of their agreement or part of their lease that there is going to be some sort of signage provided there for them, because they feel that that is the need. And with that, there's a number of other tenants in the building, so that would be the reason for the multi-tenant. The other tenants probably don't feel it's as necessary as IDEX does. But clearly what you're saying is it's not a retail, and I would agree with you for sure on that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to get a perspective, I know you kind of answered it, but is that 400 square feet? Is that 600 square feet? How big is that sign there? Just so we can get an idea of what 150.
Sure. The signage part of it would be about 300 square feet. You know, there's an arrow on here. We have an arrow included in here too, and Ryan, I think, had kind of indicated that, you know, he didn't feel that was going to work out, and that part of that arrow was to get them to the driveway, which is off of Alpine Road. So yeah, it's 300 square feet, but you know, I don't know if really the square footage of the sign at this point is the most, you know, we're willing to work with, you know, if it's certainly the 7 square feet or that was allowed in the original covenants, you know, wouldn't work at all. And so, you know, if you're talking 150 square feet, if you're talking 200, we're certainly, we can design our sign and get it back to you for approval based on that. It's just that you know, the 25-foot setback would literally put it in the middle of the parking lot, so that would not work. And the 15-foot on the height would be somewhat minimal, just simply because it's 15 feet almost to grade there. So, you know, we're not looking to do anything like a large retail sign. Like, I mean, I guess what's drawn is shown because of the setback, but, you know, we can adjust that accordingly. We're just trying to get something that will work for our tenant or tenants in the building there, so.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, thanks.
You bet, thank you.
Is there anybody else here that would like to discuss this item tonight? More chance. Anybody else like to talk about gateway signage? All right, I guess we're looking for a motion.
Can I ask a question to staff? So is the option there for us to go ahead and approve these changes as recommended by staff? And then they could come back with a conditional use request for having a taller sign or reduced setback for that one particular. I know that's not your intent with this, and we want to keep it the same throughout, but in this case, because the height is such a big piece of this.
In terms of that's hence the request to amend the sign code provisions as part of this proposal, because what we would set here is what they would have to meet, sign plan or conditional use permit, regardless of the process. So the numbers here are really what we're needing to firm up moving forward. The conditional use permit and sign plan are simply a process to enable them to construct the sign. So if there's an interest in maintaining the 15 feet setback as is in the covenants or in their design standards, and then modify again the height and square footage, that's what staff is looking for, and obviously the applicant's looking for here as well.
To clarify, if he's asking for a 0-foot setback, that would be a variance to the Zoning Board of Appeals. We would establish a setback here. If you go with 0 tonight, that would be, for multi-tenant buildings, that would be precedent setting.
And then, even though again the speaker was speaking specifically to the one current tenant, these would apply to the whole area you see there on the map. So that's important distinction to consider as well.
Yeah, Terry.
Terry can speak for himself, but I don't know if he was going after a zero setback. I think what he was thinking of going from a 70 square foot to 150 square foot, which is the staff recommendation, going from 6 feet maximum height to 15 feet, which is staff recommendation, but retaining the setback of 15 feet as opposed to the building setback and not zero setback.
Yeah, just wondering if it is a case-by-case situation too. I mean, if it could be a conditional use for this particular property.
Just to clarify, Mr. Weld, is that for the square footage, is that for the height, or is that for the setback?
The height and the setback, in this case. But
The setback would be...
But not limiting it to zero. I just curious if we set these parameters as recommended, could they come back and say, can we get a conditional use to raise it for this one?
It's a good question. To clarify, you can allow for 150 square feet tonight, and then potentially a conditional use permit could allow for it to be greater, but for the setback, it would have to be a zoning board of appeals amendment. Now, granted, this would be within the general development plan for this entire district.
I'm sorry to interrupt, and I'm sorry if I'm messing up the process here. We're drifting, I think, and conflating two different issues. The single monument sign, one building sign, is the language that is unchanged. Maximum height, not above 6 feet, minimum of 15 feet from the street right of way. So that's one building with one sign, and again, the reason it can be closer to the street right of way is it's low. You don't have a vision issue. This sign that they're talking about for IDEX and the rest of this complex is the new highlighted text. That's just reverting to your existing ordinance, period. That's where the 25-foot setback comes at. We're just doing nothing but track the ordinance. Now, if that doesn't work, I think the problem we're going to have, I think, with the conditional use is it isn't clear from this language that the city can grant a conditional use. It says basically, in the general development plan, we're going to follow whatever the city ordinance is at the time. I would suggest what you might do is recommend as part of your recommendation that we make it clear, including any conditional use granted by the city for a specific location. I do not think it's a good idea, very frankly, to take this one use and make it the standard for 700 acres in the park. You're going to regret it. We're going to get into the setbacks. It's going to be an issue. So as long as they can do a conditional use under this framework, I think you can then look at the specific site, and this will enable it. There's 2 cents, but I think that's the best way.
Yes, Terry. Oh, Jeff.
Mr. Halloran.
Sorry.
Guys, giving me a workout today.
So you're saying we could probably stay with the 70 square feet?
Yeah, it has nothing to do with this sign that they just talked about.
Maximum 6 feet and a minimum 15-foot setback, but allow conditional use permits for extenuating circumstances.
Yes, exactly. They're in the underscored. For principal buildings that have more than one tenant, like this one does, the size and height is going to track Chapter 1616, subject to the approval of the site plan in this other section. I would just add parentheses, including any conditional use granted by the city there too.
But leave the
I would leave the rest alone.
The height and the setback restrictions as is, just included.
Because it really isn't an issue for them, and it's worked for everything else. And I think if you start messing with the setback and the sight lines, we're going to have problems with Public Works, other places in the park.
Yes, Eric.
Thank you. Stay where you are, please.
Okay, that's fine.
I want to explain myself a little bit, and you're here speaking for the board, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I happen to agree that I happen to agree that it would be better if we had a uniform statute ordinance on signs that applied to everyone. And I don't really understand. It says here that the reason that there was differences was to accommodate as part of the zoning approval with the intent of providing higher amenity standards for a business park based on its visible location along the North Crossing. So for that reason, it was decided 17 years ago to make the sign recommendations the way they are right now.
Yeah.
I think that that was a mistake. I think that, and we're at a point right now where we can fix that part of it, but we restricted the setbacks far enough that people have now built their parking lots beyond what the rest of the city setback is. So for us to make it a 25-foot setback, now we have signs in the middle of the parking lot. And I think that demonstrates one of the reasons why this might have been a mistake 17 years ago. Now we're in a place where it's harder to fix. And what I'm tempted to do is make a motion that we set the sign height and size consistent with the rest of the city, but leave the setbacks at 15 feet. And I'm wondering, since you're speaking for the board, is that something that would please them?
Again, I think we're just trying to find our way through the best solution that's practical for you all here at the city and the owner occupants. My only concern on the 15 feet is what I just said a bit ago. That 15-foot setback applies only to very low signs. If we start putting them up in the air 15 feet off the right-of-way at some of these intersections, I think Public Works is going to object to that.
Okay. You're
You're also going to get very close to easements for utilities in the 15 feet off the right-of-way. So, practically, I think we can figure out a way, particularly if you can allow a conditional use exception just for this site to make something work, because it is trickier. But this rule has been in place a long time and has not really been an issue. It's the multi-tenant buildings that are really causing us to be here today.
If I might, on the sign in the parking lot, I know IDEX has got a real parking problem there. I mean, that whole project is pretty successful and all that, but there's a number of examples where signs take up a parking space all over the city.
Yeah.
I mean, it costs them one parking stall, but might not be the worst thing either. Do a little landscaping or something around it. Right, Jeff?
But I think that's right. But again, as long as you can come back with some sort of conditional use restriction and overlay and really look at that specific sign, I think that's the best way to handle that one, personally. But
can I ask a follow-up question? So I understand your sympathy toward conditional use permits, but if we went with a consistent requirement that they're 150 square feet, 15 feet in height with a 15-foot setback, would that work for the park?
again, I don't know if Public Works, once you elevate those signs, will allow them within the 15 feet. So you're beyond where I think, let me say this, if Public Works doesn't have a problem with it, yes, it works for the park.
Okay. I prefer to find something consistent. So
I understand.
We don't have to come back for conditional use.
We looked at it the same way. I think we are better off, given we have a lot of these lower legacy signs installed where people followed that. We thought we were better off for the multi-tenant buildings, which are transitional. There are more of them being converted that way. Go there with the city ordinance, leave the rest where we haven't had the issue. But again, you are free to craft whatever remedy you want. We are just trying to get something practical where they can get a sign here that works. So
thank you.
Anything else?
Anything else? All right. No? All right. I don't see any. Yes? Good.
From staff's perspective, just a quick follow-up again. If we're making modifications to the code, I just want to make sure that we don't get too far off track from what was noticed and what was specifically narrowly defined, since it is technically a rezoning process. So I just want to make sure that we're not getting too far afield from looking at other sign restrictions beyond what's being proposed here, specific to the multi-tenant component of that. So, and again, staff also felt strongly that what we're recommending would be able to meet what's being requested from IDEX and the multi-tenant building. That was really kind of drove this proposal here before you tonight. So staff too wants to make sure that whatever they're looking at for signage there would work as well. So that's wasn't arbitrary and capricious in terms of those numbers. It was something that we thought too would work in terms of setback and size and height. Thank you.
So we did not get a motion started.
Not in.
Terry?
I want to ask one other question then of staff. If you can live with the increase from 70 to 150 square feet and the increase in height from 6 to 15 square feet, can you live with staying at the 15-foot setback, which is the current requirement? And I don't know if Public Works wants to weigh in on this or wants to think about it.
I was conferring with Mr. Jensko, and it sounds as though I don't think it would directly impact, as much as Mr. Halloran appreciate his acknowledgement and concern with Public Works items. I don't think it would be directly impactful.
Yeah, usually that 15-foot zone behind the right-of-way, that's private utilities that are in there. So there's usually an easement in there that they'd have to work through with the private utilities. I don't think public utilities are in that zone, not in that business park there. So I don't think, and I didn't come prepared to speak on this topic, but I don't think engineering anyway would have an issue with this. I don't know, our community services director is here. He might have a response on that too.
Yeah. Follow up, Terry?
I'm just thinking if we can live with 70 square feet, which is the current, 6 feet high, which is the current, and 15-foot setback, just because they're higher and larger, the 15-foot setback is probably doable for those also. You know, and whether they're 76 or 115 and 15, whether they're 15-foot setback and into some utility ramifications, is the size and the height is really a moot point. So I'd be willing to propose that we increase it to 150 square feet, 15 feet in height, and a 15-foot setback. And I can put that in a motion if you would like, Mr. Rapido.
Sure. Larson?
For Mr. Allen, would that require another notice?
Sorry, I'm looking through the notices, public notices as we speak, and I don't see. I think we're very general in how we presented it, so I just wanted to make sure that we didn't get too far off what the intention was with the request. So if it's really just, in this case, a modification in the setback, I don't see any notification issues with what I'm looking at here.
Make the motion, Mr. Peterson, I'll second it.
Okay, I will make a motion that we amend the maximum site height for a multiple tenant building in Gateway to 150 square feet in size, 15 feet in height, and 15 feet for setback as it is right now.
Second. All right, we've got a motion and a second. Discussion? Yes, Terry.
Clarification, there was the recommendation from Mr. Halloran in regards to adding the language about the potential conditional use being permitted. Is that part of the?
Good.
Or the,
What's that? Would you like to amend your motion to include that, Terry?
How much of a problem does that cause?
I don't see any real problem with that. It just is simply pointing back more directly to the conditional use permit process.
I know there's some elevation variations there which can cause a problem, so I'm willing to add conditional use permit to the motion.
Part of the second?
That's fine.
All right. Additional discussion? All right, I'm not seeing any. So let's call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Congratulations. So item number 5, duplicate for the Northwest Business Park. Alan.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. This is hopefully still fresh in your minds. This one is related specifically to Gateway Northwest Business Park. So everything else essentially applies to this, but this is, again, a different location. Thank you, Ryan, for that. Again, the Gateway Northwest portion of the Gateway Industrial Park Corporation's responsibility. This area is even larger at 660 acres. This was last provided and amended as a Phase 2 General Development Plan back in 2005, so this is a little bit newer in its authorship. However, it is similar, if not identical, actually, in terms of its sign code provisions. So the same situation applies, and I don't know if the applicant would have anything else to add in this regard for this particular portion, but as noted earlier, there was a specific sign interest and request in the Gateway West portion. So the Northwest, I don't believe, has any similar sign requests at this point, but I'll defer to the applicant or others if I'm incorrect.
All right. Any questions on this one? All right.
Thank you.
Jeff, anything to add, or? Welcome back. Good to see you.
Thank you. It's been a while. Mr. Allen's correct. We have no active requests here. My only suggestion is that you make them the same, again, so we can administer the same rule.
Okay. Any questions on this one? No.
Thank you.
Again, we got a public item, so if there's anybody here who'd like to comment on this one? All right. I'm not seeing any, so maybe we should just get right to the business here. Terry?
Make my motion the same.
Duplicate, okay. A second? Eric, should we say the same? All right. All right, any comments, discussion? Not seeing any. Let's call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Congratulations, thanks, Jeff. All right, so on something funner here. Public hearing for recommendation of City Council, the Veterans Tribute Trail. Mr. Petrie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Item number 6 on your agenda is for the Veterans Trail and amenities located north of Madison Street, west of Forest Street. The applicant is Eau Claire County Veterans Fundraising Group and the City of Eau Claire. This is the trail that leads you from Madison Street north to Forest Street, west of Forest Street. The project includes a 12-foot trail, lighted concrete trail. It also includes some parking lots. My understanding, and Jeff Pippinger is here for the Community Service Director, will explain it more. They are adding some parking lots. It's in phase development. And really the Plan Commission is really looking at it since it's publicly zoned property. With that, I would defer any questions, and I know Jeff has a presentation to go over it in more detail than myself. So I would call him up to the podium and then go over his presentation.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks. Jeff.
Good evening. If I lose my voice, I apologize. I'm battling the same flu that's going around. I can hear everybody coughing here. But I'd like to thank you for hearing this. This is a project that's been, fundraising has been going on for almost 2 years. The project has been going on longer than that. And it is an area that we feel that's going to benefit from this trail. For one, it's going to connect our High Bridge Trail to our Phoenix Park. So I anticipate once this is done, it's going to be a very popular destination. And as I go through the presentation, you'll hear that we've had many meetings and many discussions with people in the community, plus the neighborhood associations, who we have gotten their absolute support and approval for this. So, see if I do this. Just to recap, this is a tribute to our history, our community, and our veterans. And this is for all the veterans of the Chippewa Valley. A little bit about the history, how we got here is back in 2014, through some complaints and obviously some sensitivity within the community and the country, really, that the school district didn't want the veterans group to do their Memorial Day and Veterans Day parade where they do a 21 gun salute. Even though the firing of the weapons are with blanks, it was a concern and a complaint. The school district changed their policy. So basically the veterans were looking for a place to hold their ceremonies. And in early 2017, a committee was formed, and basically that was the formation of the Veterans Foundation. We have several members here tonight. The president of that group, Mark Beckfield, he's not able to be here tonight, but he certainly is a person that has been a leading person on this committee, along with Mr. William Betcher and some others that are on the group. So just want to recognize some of them. I can't say all of them because I don't know all their names right off the bat, but certainly I don't want to leave anybody out, but there's been a great amount of work that has been done by this group. In 2017, the City of Eau Claire and the Veterans Group entered into a memorandum of understanding, basically designated the Forest Street Greenway to this project. And it had some benefits for us there, and I'll talk about those a little bit later. And part of the city responsibility was to, once in a level of fundraising was met, that we would bring it back to the commissions for their recommendation for approval, and then also the city council. And we're at that point. Not to the point where we're going to be able to have all the funds to finish the entire project, but we have the ability to finish phase one of that project, of making that connection from the High Bridge to Phoenix Park, and that's a big part of this project. And also, part of what we're doing is, for the city's part, is that we're going to be reconstructing Forest Street this year. We've got some utilities within that area that date back into the 1800s, 1880s. And so we're going to go through and actually reconstruct Forest Street during this time. I mentioned before we had many public hearings. In fact, by the time we're done with next week's city council meeting, we'll have a total of 11 public hearings on this project. Most recently, we had the Eau Claire Waterways and Parks Commission. They recommended approval. And prior to that, we had an open house at our central maintenance facility where we had over 50 people that attended that open house. And we got many great comments and feedback on that. Now, as I go through and I talk about some of the phases, I'll tell you what we did with some of the feedback that we received from the public, not only from the biking group, the area gardeners, but also the neighborhood association. We also had many neighborhood meetings where we met with the neighborhood to get their feedback, but also their buy-in for this project. They saw that there was going to be a great benefit for that greenway within Forest Street. Many media contacts from TV, newspaper, radio. Other outreaches, we had over 200 public service announcements on the television, both WAU, WQOW, and Fox. Many, I think there was over 25 newspaper articles on this project. And then also the many meetings with the Veterans Group. They're a big part of this, obviously, that They have great support, and they're looking for a place to have their ceremonies and be able to come and reflect. And again, I'd like to say this memorial, this tribute, isn't a memorial that's going to have a lot of the weapons of war. That's not what this is about. It's about a tribute so veterans and their families can come and reflect and honor those that have served in the military from Eau Claire and Eau Claire County and the Chippewa Valley. This is a little bit of the project location. Basically, it goes north to the point of where it's the central maintenance facility. I think this is a pointer here. So our central maintenance facility is located here. This is Forest Street, so it's east of Forest Street, or west of Forest Street, east of the Chippewa River, and then down here is the old William Street. So this will be the extent. And we'll be utilizing, so the improvements that we'll be looking at is there's an old parking lot, a gravel parking lot just to the south of Central Maintenance Facility here. That is one of the areas that the Veterans Group have agreed to. It's a city parking lot. We use it for the employees at Central Maintenance Facility and our transit workers. But they've agreed to pave this, and we'll utilize that space as both a parking space and also an employee parking space. And then down through the old right-of-way, if you remember, some of you probably remember, this is Old River Street that used to be, and there used to be homes here, along here that were all bought up. Currently we have the pavilion that's by the gardens. We've got the the community gardens through here. And then through here, this will be basically where the trail will go. And I'll have a little bit more on that, show you specifically what that will look like. So on the site plan here, looking at each item that will be improved, is the parking lot here. There's a plan here for a restroom on this portion of the parking lot area. The trail will meet up with the current trail here, and this will be a 12-foot concrete trail coming down and making the connection to the Phoenix Park, where that goes underneath the Madison Street Bridge. Additionally, this will be the gathering area here, and then there will be some amenities that will be put through here, and I'll talk a little bit more specifically about these as we move along in the presentation. I mentioned before that the city will be doing a street reconstruction project on Madison Street, or I'm sorry, Forest Street, and just south of Sarah Street, it'll be actually in this area here. We might get into this area here is the extent of this project, and we'll be reconstructing this entire area until we meet up with where the existing construction was done. I'm guessing that was back in the early 2000s, John, when we did that on Madison Street. So we'll be making the connection here. The reason why we're not doing more of that is that we need to keep this open for the trucks for Cascade Tissue, because they're not able to use the Eddy Street Bridge, so we have to keep that open. But it does give us an opportunity. I had mentioned earlier that we've had many listening sessions with groups, and part of that was the bicycle and pedestrian group had some concerns about the trail meeting up here, and then all of a sudden that's all there's going to be for access for them. So what we did is that within the street project that we're going to do here, we're going to actually create a 10-foot sidewalk trail that will give another option for bicyclists rather than having to run through the Veterans Trail. They'll have an option to go down the sidewalk. Additionally, we're going to be putting a bike line in the street too. So there'll be a bike drive through there. So there'll be 3 options for the bicyclists to be able to take rather than going down the trail. And the other, I mentioned the community gardeners in the neighborhood, they were looking for a parking area. So part of the street project, we are going to construct a 12-stall parking area for the gardeners and the neighborhood right off the trail. And I'll show a little bit more detail on that as we go along here. We needed FEMA approval on this project because some of the properties here were actually purchased with FEMA dollars. And in order to put any type of amenity through there, we had to actually send the site plans to the Wisconsin Emergency Management, who forwarded on to FEMA. And we got their approval for placing the Veterans Trail through this area. So I'll go into a little bit of how this is going to phase as far as construction, because again, the project is over a $2 million project to put the trail and all the amenities in. We're going to be doing it into a phase. So phase one, we're looking at 2019, and we're going to do the trail connection, gathering space, and then also that parking lot that I talked about. That will actually be a part of the city project on that first parking lot, not the main parking lot, but this parking lot right here. So the first phase will be the concrete trail. This will be a 12-foot concrete trail linking up from Forest Street all the way down to the connection to going underneath to the Phoenix Park, and then also the gathering area in this area. That's estimated to be about $700,000. If the bids come back favorably, our hope is to also look at doing phase two. And I'll look at phase two. But this is the parking lot that's coming off of Oak Street. Again, it's within the right-of-way, the old right-of-way. We never vacated that, but they're still in there. So we are going to build the parking lot within this area here. Phase two, as I mentioned, if bids come back favorably, we may be looking at doing phase two at the same time. This has got a $250 estimate, and this will entail doing the main parking lot that's just south of the central maintenance facility, and then also putting in the lamp posts along the stretch of the trail. One thing that we worked on in the design of this project is using CPTED principles, crime prevention through environmental design. And we did actually get an endorsement by the Eau Claire Police Department that supported that effort of making sure that we have good lighting in this area, and also view areas so we can look through to make sure that there's not any activity that shouldn't be going on there. Certainly when we put this trail through the park, we're going to expect to see a lot more people going through that area of Forest Street. So we want to make sure that we are following those principles in design. Phase three, we're going to be looking at the public restroom. I mentioned before on that main parking lot area, that's where we're looking at putting in a restroom. These will be very similar to the restroom that you see at Phoenix Park. We're going to use the same type of design. Phase four, basically this will be when we start looking at putting in the military monuments. And these are some examples of what this would be. These are basically monuments that of each branch of service that would be located likely in that gathering space area. And then some of the other monuments that we would be looking at could be looking at some of, we've got one of the Eagle. Old Abe is a big part of Eau Claire history and tradition. The Civil War unit that went from the Eau Claire area, that was their I guess their mascot. They had an eagle that was Old Abe, and that's, one of our high schools that's one of their mottos. So at this time, I do have Bill Betcher in the audience, and I'd like to ask him to come up, and he would go over some of the design parts of the rest of the project that would give you a little bit more, if that's fine.
Yeah, please do.
All right, Bill Batcher, I'm president of the Lean and Peterson Architects. I'm also on the board of the Eau Claire County Veterans Tribute Foundation. So speaking to the artwork and things that we're going to be putting in there, we haven't decided on a specific statue or artist or anything like that. When we get to the point when we get those funds raised, we'll put out a call and we will have interviews with artists and determine at that time what we're going to do. Because most of these sculptures, from the time you commission it till you get it delivered, it's going to be a year or more time. And, you know, a life-size bronze like that is in the $40,000 to $80,000 range. So, you know, we're going to start out with, there's 13 stations that'll be there to recognize the conflicts that people from the Chippewa Valley were involved with, starting at the Civil War when the 8th Wisconsin went off with Old Abe, through to the current time with the conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan. What our hope is to eventually have at each one of those stations, well, to start out, we're going to have a stone at each one of those stations that you know, say, you know, Civil War. You'll be able to take your cell phone, scan a QR code, or with the new technology, just set it on there and it'll geolocate and say, here it is. And what that'll do is open up a database that we're creating that will tell the stories of the people from this area that served there. So you can put it down on that Civil War mark and you'll find out the history of Old Abe the Eagle. You'll find out about the 8th Wisconsin and what they did. As you work your way through, when we get up to the gathering space at the mall, I'll go back to that one here, that Jeff was talking about there, that's where we're selling the memorial stones. Basically, it's a 12 by 12 granite stone, 1.5 inches thick. There'll be roughly 3,000 of those in there. So when we build that mall area, all those stones will be there as people make the donation to get a stone. It'll be etched in there, you know, who they are, the branch of service. You can set your phone on that thing. You'll learn that person's story. You'll find out that, you know, it's kind of amazing, you know, as we've been going through this, to find out some of the different stories of the people that served from this area. You know, you hear the stories of the, you know, the Civil War and all that, but I mean, we had from Eau Claire County, we had people who were on the Bataan Death March. We had people that flew B-17s in Europe, B-24s in the Pacific. I mean, it's just amazing, the stories. I mean, there's a lot of Vietnam veterans here. It'll be very nice to be able to put your phone down there and learn about that person and what they did, what they, you know, sacrificed. You know, that's the reason we're doing this. So I'll continue on with this. So that's the story of the statue over there. So the mall, the gathering space. As we come into here, up here, that's going to be the branch of service markers there, so that we'll recognize all the different branches that served. That's also going to be the area where the flagpoles will be, just behind there. Obviously, we have to be cognizant that Excel has a power line there, but we'll have the flagpoles where we'll have the flags of the services flying. We'll have the American flag there. That is where the veterans will gather to do their events. This is kind of a natural amphitheater. You've got the levee wall along the river there. It's kind of a nice sloped hill. What we're hoping to do is put some rocks and boulders and different things in there so that we can have seating there, as well as there's a fairly large area here that's more level. We'll be able to set up tents, those kind of things, so that when we have events and gatherings, we'll have a nice space for the people to meet. The parking lot will be up here. It's out of the floodplain. Toilet room here. We're going to create a nice accessible path so that, you know, veterans that aren't able to walk or, you know, mobility challenged will be able to get down there with their families and attend the events. You know, those are the things that we're looking at doing there. This portion here, as you come onto the trail, we're still not entirely sure how that's going to be laid out, whether it's going to be stones in the ground, but we're leaning more towards a wall, but that's where we're going to recognize the donors. So we'll have a granite wall there, name of the donor, and then we're leaning towards doing stars to recognize giving levels so that we can recognize the businesses and the individuals that help support this to create the trail. As we work our way down the trail, well, let's see, we got the zoom in here. I'm going to go back to a different picture here. In this area right here, when they're rebuilding Forest Street, we're going to have water and sewer stubbed in there. That's where we're going to have our water feature. We're going to have a wall of tiers there. So we're going to have the wall, you know, the water feature with benches around there, so it'll be more somber. You'll hear the water running. We'll have the Soldiers Cross there. That'll be the area for more somber meditation and remembering those who didn't make it back. Up here at the gathering area, right there, let me go back to that one. Right here, this is Gold Star mothers, Gold Star families. That's where we'll recognize the families who had a son or a husband that didn't make it back. That's a very specific monument that's, the Gold Star families, Gold Star organization has a specific way that is made, and we will do that. This goes back to where we were getting some outreach from the community group. The garden group is like, what plants are there? We will grow them for you. We will maintain them. For them to come to us and say, we were all just shocked. We're like, this is awesome. So we're getting buy-in from the groups that share the space with us, and that's a wonderful thing. So, that's an important thing for us there. As we work our way down, we get to the parking lot that the city's going to be putting in. Nice thing with that is it's centrally located for the gardens. They'll put a gate at the end here so that when the gardeners do need to get deliveries of mulch and stuff like that, they can contact the city, say, okay, we're having a mulch delivery this day at 2 o'clock. They can block the trail, close it off, make their deliveries of whatever they need to build up their beds, reopen the trail. It's nice that the city's putting in 2 other options so the bicyclists can know they got a detour around, but we've made provisions. This little pavilion here that was donated about 8 years ago, now we'll have a parking lot, so it makes that more easily available for rentals. Plus, if people want to come and just walk the trail, it gives them additional parking that they don't have to walk all the way across the park from Forest Street. The tie-in that we've got down here, the trail, it's kind of weird where we've got these really sharp corners, but we had to stay within the old city right-of-way. Xcel Energy has their substation here, and they also own that chunk of land. We've had meetings with them and discussions, and they're looking into what their future plans are. They're probably going to let us round these corners off so that we can, make the trail a little bit easier for bicycles and for pedestrians both. But that's something we're in conversation with Xcel Energy on doing that. We've got the entryway to the trail, the trailhead right here, and then there's the one at the other end. That goes to the trailhead markers. So these are patterned after what is in Phoenix Park. So they'll be similar but different because obviously it's the Veterans Tribute Trail, and instead of a phoenix, we're going to have some other artwork. The lampposts, we'll be doing the same lampposts. We don't know if we're going to have an eagle or a star. There still has some discussion as what it's going to be, but same lamppost, different emblem. And then we will also have flag stanchions on those so that when we're doing veterans events, we can hang flags off of the lampposts. Just a quick blow up of the restrooms when those go in. Initially, we're looking at single fixture bathrooms. It's actually going to be double fixture bathrooms, so that we can provide for a little bit larger crowds. That design will be finalized when we get to that phase. The nice thing about how we're placing these, I'll take one step back. Where Jeff talked about FEMA. The lands that were purchased with FEMA, that was to take down properties that kept being flooded all the time, and FEMA doesn't want any development to happen again on that land, so they don't let you put impervious surfaces or anything. That's why we have the arrow straight trail going down the old River Street right-of-way, because we can't veer off. Now, where we have the stations, we're going to probably just do gravel or some sort of impervious paver. We're allowed to put stones, we're allowed to put monuments in on FEMA purchased land because it doesn't impede the floodway. They would let us put a toilet room in the floodway on FEMA land because it's serving a park, but you got to do a building that water can flow it through. Easier to just build it up on top of the hill and get it out of the parking lot. So that's what we're doing with that. Okay, so here's the zoom in of the water feature, the POW MIA Walleteers fountain. We'll also have recognition. There'll be benches and then recognition of some donors down along that area also. And then we don't know exactly how it's going to be, but up at Spooner, they've got the Peace Bell Monument that they did up there. This is very specific because, you know, soldiers serve, but every one of them, when you talk to them, would wish that they didn't have to go over there. So we will recognize the fact that, you know, people gave, but you don't always want to have to give. So that's going to be on there. And then I'll open it up to questions on the design.
Great, you spent a lot of time on this. Nice work.
2.5 years. For me, these guys have been with it for 4 or more. Some of them 50 or more.
All right, any questions or comments? All the questions. Eric? Yes.
Just thank you for your work. It looks amazing. So.
Thank you.
I guess that's it.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. This is a public item, so if there's anybody that'd like to speak in support or has any questions or comments, this would be your opportunity. Last chance. Anybody would like to discuss? Okay. I guess we'd look for, what do we got here? We've got for recommendation of council. Anybody like to make a motion?
I'll move approval.
Eric, second by Terry. Discussion? Yeah, Terry.
Yeah, just to echo everything that's been said, I think it's amazing the fundraising and the response from our community, and you know what this means to that area and to that park, and providing them an opportunity, I think is wonderful, and I'm sure we'll all support it. So, thank you for all your work.
Anybody else? Great. All right, let's call the question. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, great. Yeah, I'm sorry, Greg.
I need to abstain.
Understood. Thanks, Greg. Well, thanks, everybody. Good luck. Looking forward to it. All right, on to another public for recommendation of City Council, County T and Fortune Drive, CSM right-of-way dedication. Are you going to follow that one up, Scott?
Yeah, a little anticlimactic here. So thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. This item is also for recommendation to City Council. The area in question is about 7.5 acres. This is on County Trunk Highway T, north of Fortune Drive. This is also in Gateway Industrial Park. Ayers Associates is the applicant on behalf of the owner, Gateway Industrial Park Corporation, requesting a CSM certified survey map for 2 lots and for right-of-way dedication of a small portion along County Line Road. The CSM, thank you, Ryan, is up there for your review. If you have an aerial as well. Thank you. Just for reference sake. The request is to, CSM in part dedicates a small rectangle on County Line Road to make the existing right-of-way consistent with the actual street. Thank you for the zoomed in portion there. And the property again is also being subdivided into 2 lots, with one being an outlot along County Highway T there, and the CSM again includes that right-of-way dedication for both yours and City Council review. We had a similar one of these believe it was a couple meetings ago, in the same general area. So very similar process here, just CSM for your review and consideration, and therefore recommendation to the city. I say along County Line Road, but it's, I think that was the last one we had was along County Line Road. This one is just south and west of there with that aerial. Ryan, do you mind putting the aerial back up? Thank you. Yeah. So County Line Road to the north there, County Truck Highway T to the west, and then Fortune Drive to the south. So just for reference sake, there was another one before you, I believe a meeting or two ago, up along, specifically along County Line Road. So apologize for a little bit of confusion there, but two similar requests, and this is the next one for your consideration. Standing for any questions.
All right, great. Any questions? Like it.
All right,
Thanks.
thank you.
Is the applicant here?
I think we chased off Mr. Halloran, so.
No, yeah, fair enough. Well, it is a public item, so if there's anybody who'd like to speak for or against this item, that is your opportunity. Last chance. Anybody like to discuss? I'm not seeing any. Anybody? Maybe look for a motion. Yes, Craig.
I'll move recommendation to the council.
Second. A second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. All right, public discussion item here. What do we got? Recommendation City Council Camden Place. Replat.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before you is a replat of Camden Place that was approved by council last year. This plat actually creates 34 twin home lots. It's located east of Jeffers Road. The applicant is Real Land Surveying on behalf of C&M Properties, the developer. The request is, again, to create the lots to make them twin home lots. There's an aerial photograph showing the development. Several foundations and building permits have been issued on this development proposal. This proposal is consistent with the rezoning and development plan that was approved by council in February of 2018. Again, it creates 34 twin home lots, and they could be sold off to individual ownership. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions for Ryan?
Oh, sorry. Still the case that these are the final division between the halves are done once the building is complete? Is that?
That's correct. Some of the building foundations have been put in. I'm not sure. I actually think there's been more foundations put in than the CS or the plat shows. Right now, it only shows there's 1, 2, 3, 4, like 5 foundations. The applicant is here. He might know if there's more put in, but we want the property line right down the middle of those twin homes, so then the owner occupied would be on either side rather than coming back with the CSM to correct the building error potentially.
Any additional questions? All right, that's it. Thanks. Is the applicant here?
Hi, I'm Jeremy Scow with Real Land Surveying, and yeah, like Ryan mentioned, that these are basically just dividing the lots in half, and I think we'll wait until the recording of the final plat to include all the buildings on there, because between now and probably the last version you got, and then when we do finally go and record this, more houses might get built at that time. So we'll hold off until, you know, the last moment of adding all the buildings on there. But yeah, all the lines will go right down through, obviously the common wall between the two building, or between the single structure, and we do all the building staking out there ourselves, so we'll ensure once we stake the building and once we, I guess, compute the location of the building on the computer, we will ensure that it is through the midpoint of that common wall of the structure.
Okay. Any questions? The applicant? Oh, yep, Mr. Peterson.
Just a procedural question. If you build one of the twin homes now and sell the 2 twin homes, and you wait till the end to do the division, how do you describe that when you do the sale?
Right now, I guess I can't answer that question with 100% certainty, but right now, since there isn't a division there, I don't think it's possible to sell the 2 different halves, because right now, like the building, even though there might be two different owners, two different tenants in each end, I think it's probably still under a single owner, just since we haven't gone through and done any divisions yet. But I could be wrong on that. But that's what I lead to believe, that the one building is still owned by one owner. But then once we go through and do this replat, two different owners can obviously own each half.
Any other questions? All right, I'm not seeing anything.
Thank you.
I think this is just public discussion, so we would just we'd be looking for a motion at this point. Yes, Terry.
I'll move approval.
Motion?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All right, I'm not seeing any others. So I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thanks. Good luck. All right, we're on to item number 9. I believe. Number 9, yes, 9. For recommendation to City Council, 100 Farwell Street, Railroad Lot. Good evening.
Thank you. Let's see. Okay, the city staff has received several inquiries from potential future developers regarding the potential sale of the city-owned lot at 100 North Farwell Street, currently known as the Railroad Lot. The parcel of land is located along the north side of the Eau Claire River, west of North Barstow Street, and east of Farwell. Staff have reviewed the request and determined that the property would be more valuable as a redeveloped site than as a parking lot. The portion of the property used for the current recreational trail along the Eau Claire River would be retained by the city, and it is not believed that the long-term intent for this lot was to remain as a parking lot. The property size is approximately 50,700 square feet. Again, that is without, that does not include the portion for the trail that we would retain. The property has the potential to be redeveloped for either commercial, residential, or mixed use, or a combination thereof. The assessed value is approximately $69,000, and the anticipated land improved value is between $5 and $10 million. Are there any questions?
Any questions? James.
Thank you. Who uses this lot now? Is it a public parking lot?
It is, yep.
And how many spaces are we talking about? Do you know?
There are, there's 66 stalls in that lot right now. The average usage is about 17.
That's my next question.
Yep.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Yep.
Additional questions?
I guess, are there any concerns with the development of the Block 7 off of Barstow, that large parking lot that someone's looking to develop, I think? Because when I've seen this lot, it's full, but maybe that's just at night. I just wasn't, because this is really going to be the last parking lot left besides the parking ramps.
Right, yep, we have looked at the proposals for the other two redevelopments on the Liner site, and those developments are still being negotiated fully, but parking is being looked at as part of the development, and some of them will be self-supporting. The ones that aren't, we are looking at shifting some of the parking into some of the other lots that we have in the area.
Questions? I'm not seeing any. We are the applicant here, or the city is rather, correct? Yes. Public discussion, so. What is discussion? Public discussion, but not public hearing, so. Correct. We'd be just looking for a motion, I guess, correct? I guess, yeah, we'd be, yeah, James.
I move approval.
For a second? Greg. Okay. Motion and a second, any discussion? Yeah, Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was not at the Waterways and Parks, but I do understand that they did not recommend approval. Based on, I think their intention was they'd like to see it become green space, but.
I think we've got some insight here.
I do have more feedback on that. Some of their concerns They had concerns about all of the redevelopment that is currently going on in the downtown. They were concerned about the food trucks that we've had in the parking lot for, this past summer was the first year that they were there, and they were questioning some of the parking that we kind of discussed. As I stated, we are looking at the redevelopments of the other areas and taking the parking into consideration and trying to make sure that they're all going to be self-supporting as much as possible. The food trucks would be looked at as part of the developments once we get to that point, see where we can relocate them, what would be the best suit for them. I guess I didn't take a lot of their feedback back, is that they wanted it to be green space. They just seemed to be more concerned about the, parking, where that was going to go, and those other couple items that I mentioned.
Terry, another question?
Do you know of any other possible public parking areas in the immediate area that the food trucks could avail themselves of? Because I don't think they can go in the ramp.
Correct. No, they can't go in the ramp. We've had a little bit of discussion about where the potential sites are for food trucks. So the current site is here, number 2. That I don't specifically know, there was just kind of throwing out some ideas, but other parking lots in the area were kind of being looked at. But again, that would be something we would look at as part of the development, and then take back the ordinance to council and have them amend the ordinance to allow them in other areas.
Yes, Terry.
I'm just thinking if the other areas don't work out, you don't have this one to fall back on then. You know, is number 3 is the one by the old railroad yards?
This is the Riverview lot?
Yeah.
Yep.
And is that pretty much open on the weekends and the evenings, or?
The Riverview lot?
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, as far as occupancy.
Yeah, that one has 103 stalls, and there's typically about 32 stalls vacant on average. I mean, there is capacity there that would be able to hold it.
And speaking with the city engineer, I believe that seemed to be the most viable alternative or next option moving forward for the food trucks and other uses around there.
Questions or comments? I think we've got a motion and a second, so we, discussion.
Do you have a motion?
That we did.
Oh, okay. I just want to comment on the food trucks a little bit. I love our food trucks. And, you know, I was involved on city council with getting that whole thing started and everything. But on the other hand, I think we should be careful about making it the city's responsibility to find some place for them to park. In fact, there's some folks in the community who feel like it's unfair of us to let them park in public spaces anyway. It kind of sets up an unfair competition. I don't happen to agree with that assessment, but I think we should be careful about foregoing a development plan on the argument that the food truck can't park there anymore. So that's just my feedback on it.
Any other discussion? Otherwise, we'll call the question. Okay, all those in favor of the recommendation? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, good luck. Excess land, let's see, item number 10, for recommendation of City Council, excess land at 820 Malden Avenue.
Okay, thank you again. The city purchased the property at 820 and what was known as 820 and 860 Malden Avenue by E&E Smith Rentals back in May of 2017 for the use of relocating the Fire Station 10 property. The 2 sections of land there would be the remnants of what is remaining. We are looking at declaring both sections as excess land for a potential development of multifamily on either lot. Values of the properties would be determined based on the remediation costs, and those costs would be at the buyer's expense. The northern section is approximately 18,000 square feet, and the southern section is around 130,700 square feet. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Not seeing any. Thanks.
Thank you.
Again, this is just public discussion, so we'd be looking for a motion at this point. Craig.
Move approval or recommendation.
Okay, a motion? Craig?
I'll second it.
All right, a second? Any discussion? All right, not seeing any, so let's call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Let's see, land acquisition on Folsom Street for recommendation of City Council.
The property owner of the vacant land located along Folsom Street, has agreed to sell the 3 parcels of land as indicated on the map. The property is located across the street from the Roosevelt School. We would be looking to purchase the property for $285,000. The property did have an appraisal completed in March of 2017 showing the same value. We also did have a Phase 1 environmental study done on all of the property in February of 2017. There was no evidence of any environmental conditions. The purchase of this property is consistent with the 2015 comprehensive plan. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions? Is there any use currently on these lots, or are they?
No, they're just vacant.
Who owns them right now?
Wayne Peters.
Okay. Any questions? None? Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
You looking for a motion again? Terry?
Move to approve.
Motion and a second. Terry?
I'll second.
Great. Any discussion? So let's call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Congratulations. Let's see, last one. For approval by Plan Commission, site plan, 2,900 West Folsom Street. VFW expansion. Features, all right.
It's working?
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Before you is a site plan to expand the existing VFW that's located on West Folsom Street, 2900. Lean and Peterson Architects is the applicant. VFW Post 7232 is the property owner. Currently, the bar restaurant is looking to expand. The plans are in your packet, along with the aerial photograph. They're looking to expand the building and also the parking lot. The narrative explains the project for two additions to the existing building to upgrade the existing restroom facility and kitchen space and to add dining space. The site plan shows approximately 1,500 square foot in building additions. Along with the improvements, they're adding bicycle parking. They do not show the number of stalls, but they'll have to show them on the revised site plan. They also show the landscape plan, mixture of street trees and foundation plantings, along with street lighting or proposed parking lot lighting and building elevations are in your packet. The parking requirement is based on 1 per 3 persons based on the maximum occupancy, or 1 stall per 100, whichever is greater. According to their calculations, 200 persons would be allowed in the new facility. According to my math, that would be 46 stalls. They're proposing 74 stalls. The parking lot does exceed 25% of the minimum or the maximum number of stalls. So with that being said, the Plan Commission will have to find the need for additional stalls. The applicant did note the facility has larger events and an outdoor canopy that is shown on the in the back here. that is used for events usually in the spring, summer, and fall. They also have numerous volunteers that serve at the facility throughout the day and night. In addition, staff would note both road frontage along West Folsom and Preston Road lack the width of pavement for on-street parking. With that being said, they are also adding a driveway that's located off of West Folsom, and this would be considered front yard parking. However, they're just using that for deliveries. It'd be up to the Plan Commission to determine that driveway appropriate or not. Typically, you see that for drive-through restaurants. In this case, they believe they need it for delivery trucks. The engineering report is in your packet along with grading and drainage, public utilities, transit, and traffic. I would note that this driveway angle approach, the engineering department is looking to modify that to allow for turning movements, access onto Folsom. Mr. Jensko can speak more to that if there's any questions. With that being said, I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding this additions.
Any questions for Mr. Petrie? All right, I'm not seeing it. Thank you. I guess this is public discussion again, not public. Yeah, is the applicant here? Would you mind coming forward?
Hi, I'm Rita Liddell with Lane and Peterson Architects, and this is Kevin Higgin with VFW Commander at the Post. And so I just wanted to say that part of our request here is that with the addition to the south of the building, that's where most of the services will be occurring. Actually similar to what it is now. That's kind of the same layout they have, pretty similar now. What we want to do is, improve their environment so they have a new kitchen and the new restrooms and stuff. But the reason for services there, what this plan will do is really improve the look. I don't know if you've been by there lately, but they've got like their dumpster and stuff out front, and this would just really clean that up for them a lot more. The reason for the drive is right now the semi trucks come in and they go actually parallel with the building, and they pretty much block whatever parking is there for the time that they're on site. So what we'd like to do is pull the semis and delivery trucks, I should say, and then have them exit to the west there back onto Folsom. And then, Kevin, did you want to say anything?
No.
Okay.
Nothing to add.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Okay.
Thanks a lot for coming
Thank
out.
you.
Is there anybody here that'd like to discuss this item? I guess I'm not seeing any. So we'd like to call the question, or not call the question, I'm sorry, look for a motion.
I'll move to approve.
Gary, motion?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All right, I'm not seeing any. Let's call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, great. Oh, and
Once
one
again, I
abstention.
have to abstain.
Sorry, Greg. Just saw that one coming. All right. Congratulations. Good luck, you. So we're on to discussion and direction, code compliance items. Compliance items. Future agenda items.
Yes. Just real briefly, we do have, I think, a couple items for the next agenda. So anticipate having much shorter, but still another meeting here in 2 weeks on the 18th of February.
And who's going to represent engineering? Is that a holdover until they find a replacement?
Yeah, that sounds good.
I don't think they've determined.
You're gonna keep coming back until, that's what, everybody else has to do that, John, I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's tradition on plan commission until you're replaced, right?
You just don't get paid like the rest of us, John, next time.
We'll put them on the plan commission list for
Right.
New membership.
I'll come and heckle.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, additions or corrections to minutes? Yes, Terry.
Couple of clarifications. When the city council looks at something a week from now on a Monday night and something on Tuesday morning, those are separate items. One is public hearing and the other is,
Yes.
I just noticed two dates here that,
Correct. Yeah, there's the public hearings are on Monday, and then the legislative agenda, the kind of action items that the council takes under consideration. So approving ordinances, resolutions and such is the Tuesday.
some of these items came up Monday in front of the council and others came up Tuesday, so.
True, like a plat, for example, or CSM, that'll just go straight to Tuesday. So, but things that say public hearing would go to Monday and then action on Tuesday.
Good. All right. Any corrections to the minutes? No? All right, then we are adjourned.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and the City of Eau Claire. A transcript of this meeting is available for the hearing impaired. It will be available within 7 days of this telecast. Call 715-839-4912 or TDD 715-839-1689 or write Eau Claire City Clerk, P.O. Box 5148, Eau Claire, Wisconsin 54702-5148. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839-5067 or online at valleymediaworks.org.